Feeling another wet thump on his shoulder, shrugging the meat away, Ed remembers. Daddy told him the pigeons came down to Kentucky and Tennessee in the old days, but he hadn't seen them there since long before the war. Daddy tells Ed he's not going to forget what he's about to see. He and George and Uncle Ezra with others walk a far piece down the pike, a pike rough, flatter and straighter than he'd ever seen. Walked past farms and orchards and stands of trees and some of the big, weird, devilish mounds, finally coming to a broad, cleared pasture, maybe 30 acres total on the edge of a spread of beech-nut and hickory trees. Ed listens to the man talking the whole time, but they might as well be talking in Latin. He understands maybe one out of every 40 words they say, and it's usually the same word. 100 or so men and boys already there in the pasture when they arrive, busy cooking, cleaning and loading their guns, gathering up brush and stacking into piles in the pasture near the trees, a few sitting around playing music. First time he ever saw a white fiddle player, Ed remembers. Smells of gunpowder, dew and grass, tree pollen, tobacco, whiskey, shit, sweat. No dogs, no hogs, these Nimrods track nothing but in the right season simply wait for heaven to fall untrammeled into their laps, for certain knowing that that's the way it will always be. Cousin George hollers to Ed, his daddy, just before noon saying, "Look there," nodding north. Ed sees it, a storm cloud growing bigger and darker by the minute, spreading along the edge of the horizon like a stain, like ink in water. Hearing the noise in the distance, Ed thinks of a tree full of swifts at night time, multiplied 1,000,000 times. A steady ooh, 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 ooh grows ever louder, until the sound is that of the express train passing directly overhead as you lie still on the tracks. Dust rises, swirls up from the road and the edges of the pastures in eddies, gathering strength into devils and twisters, bouncing ahead of the flock's arrival as it prepares to come down. Looking heavenwards, Ed sees a vast black hand reaching across the sky, long fingers curving toward the trees as if aiming to pull up the forest by its roots. Feels hot rain on his head and shoulders as the flock in its entirety releases itself upon the men below. Hears the cracking and crunching of wood throughout the forest as the birds, cascading and shuddering waves by the hundreds of thousands, crush the trees beneath their weight, snapping century-old limbs like chicken legs. Bursts of flame and fireball flare as the men torch the brush, black smoke thick as the clouds of pigeons pour off the fires into the lower levels of the forest, confusing the birds. Having settled seconds earlier, hundreds of thousands of pigeons take off again, intent on coming down elsewhere away from the smoke. The men fire. Deafened, Ed covers his head with his hands and falls to the ground. Birds rain from the sky in sheets, each pigeon a foot long or longer. Pink-necked, blue-headed, swift-winged, red holes blasted through tender breast or fat marble thigh. A cloudburst of corpses, a deluge of blood. Ed, opening his eyes, looking up, sees nothing but blue sky and long, thin clouds. Hears the sounds of the world, the creek, the wind, the frogs, the birds. Taking Snowball's reins in his hands, tapping his sides with his feet, Ed guides his mount back up toward the road. Pieces of meat lie everywhere. He spots weasels creeping along the edges of bushes, preparing to rush in to scavenge. Buzzards puking, Ed Tincher decides. Loaded up on carrion somewhere 2 hollers over and now trying to dispose of the excess so they can make it over the next knob. Ed looks up again toward the sky, seeing white smudges on a blue field. A lengthy coil of wood smoke streaming upward from the Crouch's chimney. And this new one is dedicated to my wife, Larry, as he's on.